support health disparities research. We have 7 regions currently. I'm going to talk a little bit about our region, which is Region 4, who is sponsoring the webinar today. But really, all 7 regions work very, very closely together with our project office at M.S.C.E in the Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities. And really what we're focusing on is a number of things. It's really enhancing capacity in the areas of disparities research. So really building those collaborations to enhance our research in this area, provide recruitment and career professional development, particularly for underrepresented investigators, trainees, and students. So there's very much a very strong training focus to the GMAP activities. We do a lot in terms of facilitating communication and dissemination, and for those of you who have been more involved with GMAP and on our various listservs, you get lots of communications from us in terms of new grants, new opportunities, training opportunities, and so it's really a way to disseminate really important information for those of us in health disparities research. And then we are doing ongoing evaluation of these activities and how to continue to support and improve our work through NCI's GMAP program. Next slide, Carrie. So today's webinar is really being sponsored by one of the regions, and we're called Region 4, as we so aptly named ourselves in the very beginning, back in 2009, the Cancer Disparities Research Network. We are the GMAP Region 4 and have been part of this since its initiation. We have our coordinating office, and each GMAP region has a coordinating office. So for those of you who are in institutions outside of our specific region, you're going to have a coordinating office to support you as well. Dr. Nessa Espanol and I are the co-directors of GMAP Region 4 at CDRN, and Carrie Norbeck is our Senior Research Regional Coordinator, who really is sort of our heart and soul of our region and keeps all of these pieces together and keeps in contact with the many investigators that are part of our GMAP region. And this is just to give you a sense of kind of how this program in one region, and again, you'll see this in all 7 regions, has really evolved over the last 7 years. We really started out with 13 of the regional GMAP partner institutions. So these were institutions that were well connected and connected with some NCI funding, and with the goal to continue to understand the region, understand the breadth of investigators that are represented here, and begin to really build this network over time. And as you can see, where we are today is we have over 400 members, 250 career trainees, 25 community health educators funded through the NCI's National Outreach Network, and more than 40 institutions that are part of just Region 4. Again, much broader as we look across the whole nation through the GMAP regional offices. So again, we've started with a number of research pilots. We've done a lot of work in understanding more the scope and breadth of biospecimen research in the region, and I think where we're really headed now, and a lot of our emphasis is on really building the pipeline in terms of health disparities researchers, and so we're really having much more of a training focus today. So Carrie, next slide, please. Thank you. And so this is just to give you a sense for our region, the institutions that some of a representative sample of many of the institutions that are involved in our network, and the way that the network operates, and this is true of each regional GMAP program, is we have a steering committee, what we call the ICC, which is, again, representatives from a variety of institutions in that region, investigators, early stage investigators to very seasoned senior investigators that really help to drive our work and drive the initiatives. And then we have committees that actually focus on very specific areas like scholarship development, communications, and evaluation. And again, for those of you who are not in our region, you will see very similar kinds of structures and opportunities as well to get connected to your GMAP regional network. So I kind of wanted to give you that background. Some of you, again, and we'll see in some of the responses, may be very well connected already to your GMAP network. Some of you, this may be new information and an important way to get connected. And we'll give you some more information at the end of the webinar about how to do that. So I want to kind of turn our attention to really the focus of today's webinar, which is, again, the NCI diversity and reentry supplements. And again, a little reminder, these are the 2 points we'd like you to put in the chat, if you can, a little bit about you, and a little bit about what you already know or how you're already connected to GMAP would really be very valuable for us to have a better sense of who's on the call. And also what your needs may be moving forward from the call. So next slide, Carrie. So today's webinar, what we really would like to accomplish is to be able to give you an overview in the details that Dr. Alison Lin will provide on the diversity supplement mechanisms. And then 2 case studies really from the field, getting that perspective of seasoned investigators who have actually utilized these mechanisms, some questions and answers from all of you. We want to be able to get your feedback and hear your questions and get some of those answered, and then talk a little bit about resources. So, and what we will do is we will take questions and answers after Dr. Lin's presentation, since she will need to leave the call. But so we want to have some time for questions for NCI, and then we'll also collect questions that she's happy to answer post the call if other things come up later in the call. Next slide. So let me first introduce Dr. Alison Lin, who's a program officer for the Diversity Training Branch at NIH NCI in the Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities. And Dr. Lin has a tremendous amount of experience in these areas, and I think will be an incredible resource to us as we learn more about these supplements. And for many of you on the call, both as senior investigators or potential diversity supplement grantees, I think really be able to get a much better sense of this mechanism and how to work with NCI on these types of grants. Next slide. And then our 2 voices from the field, we want to thank Dr. Shawna Hudson and Dr. Carmen Guerra, both who have been very involved with our GMAP Region 4, who have Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and member of the Rutgers Cancer Institute. Dr. Carmen Guerra is the Associate Professor of Medicine at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, and also Associate Chief of Staff and Associate Director of Diversity and Outreach at Abramson Cancer Center. Both have tremendous experience in this area, and we're excited to have them with us today. So with that, I think I think there is just one more slide, Carrie. Yes, and so when we get to the case studies, these are some of the questions as we prepared for this webinar that we discussed and hope to cover. And the discussion points that each Shawna and Carmen will share with you. And it's really, what types of supplements have you and your colleagues successfully submitted? You know, at what stage was the parent grant? At what stage did the PI apply for this diversity supplement? Some of the sort of those details about how that worked in terms of where the parent grant was, what research methods were proposed, because again, this could be a broad range of research design and research methodologies, and what was the value or outcome added by the supplement. In addition, how have senior investigators and early stage investigators found each other? Again, not necessarily always a simple process. And so I think there are really lessons from the field in terms of how to create those connections and make those connections for this mechanism. And then finally, how do you see the diversity supplements building your research labs, your department or program, but also the larger research organization, because there are benefits to the larger institution, not just as us as individual investigators. So with that, I think we are moving on to Dr. Lin's presentation. And yes,
yep.
talk about diversity supplements.
Yep. I will stop sharing. And now, Alison, you can go ahead and share yours. Alison, are you talking? I can't hear you. Okay, I see your slides.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. I'm not sure what happened there. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Linda, for that introduction. I think you covered all of the points, so I can skip over a lot of the introduction. Thank you all for being online. I want to first thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to talk to each other. And on behalf of CRCHD, I'd like to thank all the participants online for your interest in diversity training in general and diversity and reentry supplements specifically. So like Linda said, my name is Alison Lin. I am a program officer in the diversity training branch at the Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities at M.S.C.E. Our center, the primary mission is basically, as the name says, we aim to reduce cancer health disparities by promoting cancer health disparities research, and also by working to increase diversity in the biomedical workforce. So programs like GMaP is one of the many efforts to help make that mission a reality. I would really strongly encourage all of you to continue to communicate and network via GMaP and to take advantage of all the resources and the work that they do. So what I will focus on today will be the diversity supplements, but I'm going to start by giving just a brief background of our CURE training program that'll give you a better idea of how diversity supplements and reentry supplements fit into the grand scheme of things here at the center, and it'll help you put together a better application, hopefully. So about 20 years ago or so, our center director, Dr. Springfield and colleagues, really established the continuing umbrella of research experiences program, the CURE program, with the aim of increasing workforce diversity in the cancer research workforce. And this program was a direct result of an analysis done at that time of the gaps in diversity training and what needs to be done. So the primary purpose and goals of the CURE program is to increase the size of the talent pool, especially at the young end, so that we can have a cohort of young investigators ready to feed into the biomedical research pipeline. The second goal is to emphasize specific scientific areas of greatest need. And this obviously will change with time. It's going to evolve and grow with time. Two of our current areas of concentration, of focus, is, of course, cancer health disparities research, and also bring quantitative sciences into cancer research areas. Bring the one example, of course, is imaging and all those kind of physical sciences, but also in the intersection between behavior science and epidemiology is where we're seeing a lot of need to promote. The last goal of the CURE program is to expand and extend the period of training. And this is so that the trainees, as they leave the CURE pipeline, would be better prepared for independent research. So the CURE program tries to reach those 3 goals and achieves the 3 goals via a cluster of funding mechanisms. And this is basically the training opportunities that we talk about. So the CURE program currently support actually all the way down to middle school now, but mostly high school, undergraduate students, pre-doctoral, postdoctoral, investigator level, and 2 things that you don't see on here, but it's very important to note, post-bac individuals and post-master's individuals. For the post-bac and the post-master individuals who just need a year or 2 to build up their resume, help them decide if they want to go into an MD program, PhD program, MD, PhD program, whatever graduate program they want to go into. Those 2 years, you know, we can support up to 2 years while, of them doing research in the lab so that they can be better prepared for their graduate program. So the funding mechanisms include things like the F31, which is a fellowship that supports pre-doctoral for both MD, PhD students and PhD students. It includes 4 different types of K awards, the Career Development Awards for postdoctoral fellows and investigator level people. It also includes a diversity R21 and SCORE programs, things like that for the more advanced, more senior investigators. Now, these are career stage specific funding mechanisms, but they don't necessarily connect because when you are finished with your pre-doctoral studies, you're done with the F31, it's very unlikely that you can jump directly to a K award. So what we also support is a number of supplements, and these supplements basically serve as the glue that kind of holds the whole training pipeline together. And the supplements can support students and individuals from high school all the way on all the way through to investigator level. And the supplements, as we'll get to it in a minute, for an individual, you can apply for a diversity supplement at each career level as you go up. So we've had candidates that can start from high school and then get another supplement as an undergraduate student, then one as post-bac, then pre-doctoral, et cetera, as they go up the line. Now, the one thing that I do want to say is that the supplements are not meant to be the end-all. What we use the supplements for is that bridge as you are moving on to the next level of your career. So when you're starting graduate school, for example, you can apply for a diversity supplement to support you. And what we expect you to do is within the first couple years, develop a program, a research project with your PI, with your primary mentor, so that you can then apply for F31 to support you for the remainder of your pre-doctoral studies. So the supplements are really there to help you build your next step, build your resume so that you can get to the next step. The whole purpose of the CURE program, taken together, all these different mechanisms as we support individuals through, the whole purpose is to help you reach that basically the golden grail, holy grail of NIH, which right now is still being measured by getting a grant such as the R1. But what it means to us is that we can help you build your independent research program. That is really the overall goal of all these mechanisms. So today we're going to focus on the supplements within the CURE program that we support. We have 3 different kinds of supplements: the diversity, the reentry, and the CURE. We're going to only talk about the diversity and the reentry supplements today. Both of these are NIH-wide announcements. So these are not restricted to NCI. If you're interested in applying for a diversity or reentry supplement and you have a grant that is not with NCI, be aware that 24 out of 27 institutes and centers at NIH participate in the diversity supplement and reentry supplement program. And at other institutes, there are my counterparts, basically program officers who manage those supplements. So if you want to apply and don't know or can't find their contact information, I'm happy to direct you to the right person. The parent grant, NCI requires that the parent grant must have at least 2 years of active status left at the time of supplement application. So supplements, as most of you know already, I took a quick look through the chat, and a lot of you online are PIs. But for those of you who are a little less familiar, the supplement is exactly as the name implies. These are additional funding that's given to a currently active NIH grant that would support the salary and training of the diversity supplement candidate. So we need to have, every supplement need to have an active parent grant in order for it to move forward, and we require the time of application that the parent grant must have at least 2 years of active status. The candidates that the diversity supplements support must be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. And the next one is really the biggie, because this is where we have most of the trip-ups. The candidate cannot have any concurrent PHS support when you apply for a diversity supplement. There are basically, PHS is, you can Google it, it's made up of 8 agencies. The 3 big ones are NIH, FDA, CDC. If your candidate has been supported on one of these, they are not eligible as a diversity supplement candidate. And certainly, the parent grant coming from NIH is going to fall into that category. If the candidate is coming off of an institutional training grant, like the T32, we need a letter from the institution explaining the reason of why you're coming off of the institutional training grant. Now, there's a purpose behind all this. It's not just a random rule. The purpose is that the diversity and reentry supplements are meant to increase the workforce diversity. It's not meant to transfer people off of the mainstream grants and having them moved over to diversity supplements just because they are from diverse populations. So that's really the rationale behind that rule, and this is an NIH program announcement rule, so not NCI specific, and there is nothing program can do about that, so there's no leeway there. However, there is so very recently a new program announcement came out. So the first link that you see on this page is the NIH program announcement for the diversity supplement, the 16288. And we're going to get to a caveat that the new program announcement has brought up concerning the PHS funding in a minute. So candidates for the diversity supplement, so these things that I just went through on this page are for both diversity and reentry supplement. Now for the diversity supplement, it in addition requires the candidate to be from an underrepresented population as defined by NSF and NIH. So the categories are spelled out in the program announcement, and that's where you need to go to see which of the 4 categories that your candidate fits into. They're basically based on race, ethnicity, disability, and persons from disadvantaged background, which the last one is only applicable to students or younger or more junior. So I have 2 links here. The first, like I said, is the NIH program announcement, and the second is going to be very useful if you apply to an NCI diversity supplement. This is the diversity supplement guidelines that we have developed based on the basically most frequently asked questions and pitfalls and so forth that we have seen in the past years as people apply for diversity supplements. For a reentry supplement is a little different. The reentry supplement does not have any race, ethnicity type of requirement on the candidate. The candidate can be anybody, but the requirement is that the candidate must have had to take a hiatus from research for a period of between 1 and 8 years. And at the time that their research career got interrupted, they must have been a postdoctoral fellow already or faculty before this interruption occurs. So there are reasons, there are eligible reasons for the interruption. But if you know of such a candidate, this is really a very little known supplement, but again, it's NIH-wide and it applies to a lot of ICs, a lot of institutes, and we support it as well. So I have the link to the program announcement to that, and also the reentry supplement guidelines that's developed for NCI. So I would encourage the PIs especially to think about this and see, if you can identify candidates to support via the reentry supplements. The reentry supplements are there for, you can apply for a maximum of 2 years for a new supplement, and it needs to have a very, very strong career development plan. So I want to go through a few things on putting the supplement application together, just based on what people usually ask. First of all, there are 2 receipt periods, submission periods, and this is different. This is institute specific. For NCI, there are only 2 submission periods. It's not rolling admission. And if you submit outside of these periods, October 1 to December 1 and February 1 to March 30th, if you submit outside of these periods, we cannot take the application. The application will not be considered. Okay. And secondly, before we go into any details, we really, really strongly encourage the PIs, mentors, and candidates to contact our office, to call me prior to application. And also as you apply, as you submit the application, to let us know that you have done so, just to help us keep track of your application better. The prior to application call is very important in the sense of we can answer a lot of eligibility related questions there, and we can also just be on the same page as what kind of application is coming in and what would make a strong application based on the candidate. For these calls, I get a lot of inquiries. But for these calls, I would recommend, if at all possible, to have both the primary mentor and the candidate online at the same time. I mean, I am happy to speak with anyone individually as well for different reasons, for career development or any other questions that you may have. But in the interest of application itself, it would be good to have the primary mentor and the candidate on the phone at the same time, because that piece of the application needs to be coherent. There needs to be communication between the mentor and the candidate, and that's critical to the success of the application. So in the application, we're essentially looking for 3 specific components. The actual forms and everything you can find in the guidelines. I'm not going through those, but I want to kind of highlight what are the content that we're looking for. So the first piece is a candidate, and here we're looking at the motivation of the candidate, the accomplishment to date, and this is going to be career level specific. High school student candidate is going to be very different from investigator level candidate, the kind of things that we're looking for. And the career goals, both short-term and long-term, of the candidate. So most of this is going to come through the personal statement, as described in the guidelines as well. And the personal statement can be a separate document that's attached, or it can be just in that section A of the new NIH file sketch. However you want to do it is fine, but that content needs to be there. We're looking for motivation. We're looking for career goals. The second component, of course, is the research plan. And here, we don't typically have a lot of problems because we require that the supplement research plan, the supplement project that's proposed, must be relevant to the parent grant project. The diversity and reentry supplements are administrative supplements. So that means they are not peer-reviewed, which means we cannot support new science. So the project that's proposed must be relevant to the parent grant project, and that relevancy needs to be explained explicitly. It does not have to be long, but it needs to be clearly, explicitly explained in the application what is the connection to the parent grant. So typically what we have in the application is the parent grant specific aims copied and pasted over, or rewarding of it depending on whatever the applicant, whatever the PI wishes to do. And then underneath that is the supplement project, what is proposed. And this scientific project, the scope of it and everything is going to be career level dependent. For a student, for example, who hasn't had a lot of experience in science, it probably would be sufficient to just say this particular person will contribute to aim 3 of the parent grant, and specifically he or she will do this and this and this, and that will be fine. But for someone who is at a postdoctoral level or above, you know, we are really looking for that career transition where they're getting close to building their own independent research program. So they need to have a program with enough meat in it that could serve as a foundation as they go off and build their own independent research program. So it could be a logical extension or expansion of the parent grant. But again, that logic needs to be explicitly explained. It's not enough that we see it over here when we review the application. If you don't say it, if you don't put it down on paper, we don't know that you see it. So that connection needs to be clear. The scientific impact to the parent grant should be explained as part of that, and that kind of comes out naturally from explaining the relevancy. Research design and feasibility, again, here you need to keep the career level and the experience level of the candidate in mind. What you propose, what is proposed for this candidate to do, is it feasible? And within the time that you propose that this thing will be done. Is it reasonable and feasible? And very importantly, this last bullet point, how does it align with the candidate's career goals? How will it help the candidate develop his or her own career goals toward what they want to accomplish? The last component is super important. It is the mentoring and career development plan. And here we're looking at the qualifications of the mentor or mentors. Whether or not you have a team is up to you. But the primary mentor, the scientific proficiency, of course, will be looked at, but in many cases, that part is sort of a given because this person is funded by NIH and has enough funding to support their own program. So the scientific proficiency in the project, in the research plan, relevant areas is important, but also the mentoring expertise of the mentor is very important. In terms of how many people, how many individuals at what career levels has this mentor mentored before, and where are those people now? You know, you can write down numbers like Dr. So-and-so has mentored, 14 individuals in their lab. But the question is, what happened to them? Where are they now? So that is an important part of it. If the primary mentor is relatively junior on paper, we suggest that it may be a good idea to include someone who has more mentoring experience on the mentoring team. If there are more than one person as far as mentoring is concerned, if there's a team, then the role and commitment of each person needs to be clearly identified. It is not enough to say the dean of my whatever department is going to be part of this and is going to oversee this. What we want to see is the direct connection between the candidate and each person on the mentoring team, each person that's identified, whether it's through meeting, face-to-face or remotely, depending on the situation, whether it's through, if they're part of the committee, thesis committee, whatever the role is, it needs to be clearly said, and the primary mentor needs to be clearly identified so that we make sure the candidate does not fall through any cracks when there are too many people involved. The training of the career skills, because very often we get a very nice description of the research skills that the candidate is going to gain as part of the research project, and that's natural. but we also want to see what kind of training or career skills do you have planned for the candidate. A good, strong application would have clear benchmarks that are candidate-specific. The plans are going to be candidate-specific. The benchmarks should be feasible, reasonable, and candidate-specific, both in terms of research project, the research progress, what are you envisioning happening within the time period that you propose the supplement to be, and also in terms of career skills. And this totally depends on the career level. If you have a younger student, obviously graduation is going to be one of the top priorities. They need to get their degree in order to move on to the next stage. For a more advanced candidate, we have postdoctoral fellows or investigators, then the benchmarks are more likely going to be things like manuscripts, grants, and so forth, depending on what the goals are of the candidate. So all three components need to come together and be cohesive in the application. They need to speak to each other. If the candidate says in the career goals section, I want to be such and such, and I want to do this in 5 years, and in 10 years, I see myself doing that. And then the research plan and the mentoring and career development plan have nothing that addresses any of that, then that's a disconnect, and that usually is where the application would fail. Okay. Now, here are some general logistics of it. The cycles, as like I said, the submission periods are October 1, December 1, and February 1, March 30th. Is the 2 cycles, and the funding recommendation are usually anticipated in February, March, or June, or July. So right now we're wrapping up, for example, this year, we're wrapping up the recommendations right now for the second cycle. Okay. Now, what we have always said, this PHS funding is a big issue. Okay. So after you throw in your application and while you're waiting for the funding recommendation, the candidate cannot be supported by PHS funding, because what has happened in the past is then the candidate gets put on something like typically the parent grant, and then our Office of Grants Administration, after we recommend it for funding, they do a check and they go, whoops, no, this person is supported by parent grant, and it makes it ineligible. Now, what is new in the newest program announcement at NIH in the 16288 link is that for the graduate students and postdoctoral fellow that apply, if you look at the announcement, there is now a new sentence that says individuals may be supported by the parent grant for short periods at the recipient's risk, pending IC decision on the supplement application. This seems to indicate that once you put in the application, you may be allowed to put that candidate, a graduate student or postdoctoral fellow, on your parent grant while you're waiting for the decision at your own risk. Now, this is very new, and I know for a fact that our Office of Grants Administration hasn't quite decided on how to determine what short period means, what pending decision means, and all that. I would say, from my perspective, the safest thing to do is still try, if there's at all other options available, to not put the recipient, not put the candidate on PHS funding until you get the notice of award, if that supplement will be awarded. However, I did want to point out that there is that sentence now, so there's a little leeway. But what remains to be true is at the time of application, you still cannot be a candidate that's being transferred from any other PHS support onto the supplement. Post-award, let's say that you go through the process and you get a supplement. We require annual supplement progress report in the format that we will let you know when we give you the funding recommendation letter. It will be there, and that is due together with a parent grant progress report. Please be aware that if a supplement is to be awarded, it will sync, the budget period of the supplement will sync to the parent grant budget period. And you need to take that into account as you think about the budget that you're going to request for the supplement. I think I'm going to leave it at that, and you can call me and we can discuss it. The supplement progress report is attached, can be attached, or should be attached to section G1 of the parent grant RPPR. And if you are late and do not put it in together with the parent grant RPPR, then you send it directly to us with institution approval. All of these are in the guidelines. The instructions of how to submit progress report is in the guidelines. Actually, let me go back to the budget thing, because that's an important point, and it holds up awards sometimes when the budget is not quite straightened out. So let's say that you have a parent grant that budget period cycles at the end of June, and you applied for support for a candidate starting from March. Okay, so what you can do, if it actually does get awarded, you came in, you submit the application in October, and you wanted the budget to start from March. What we're going to do then is to give you 3 months, March, April, May, June, the 4 months at the end of June. That'll be your first year award. And then your second year will be July to next June. And then from there on, it follows the parent grant. So if you want to end the award at a time that's different from the end of the budget period of the parent grant, say your parent grant cycles at the end of June, but you want to end the award at the end of November. What's going to happen to your supplement is that last year, your supplement will be considered to be active even though you don't have money for all 12 months. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is at that point, if you want to come back for extension, it's going to be a little tricky because your supplement is technically still active even though you're out of money. Okay, so if you have situations like that, call me and we can discuss it so that you can figure out how to do the budget. So extension, as I started to mention, the no-cost extensions follow the parent grant. If you have, if the parent grant has authority for a first no-cost extension without prior NCI approval, then it's the same for the supplement. However, in that case, our center needs to be informed and we require a progress report. Again, this is in the guidelines. The cost extensions are not that often granted. We have to look very carefully at the progress. The PIs need to contact our office. It needs to be the PI. So the PI of the supplement is the PI of the parent grant. And that's the person who's ultimately responsible for the supplement. So the candidate can certainly inform me that you're thinking of extending, but it's not a formal request until the PI contacts our office, okay? Cost extension applications have certain document requirements, and those are listed in the diversity supplement guidelines. Closeout is similar to NIH grant closeout policies. Final progress reports are due to NCI within about 120 days of the end of the supplement. The simplest thing to do is to follow the parent grant. When you submit the final report of the parent grant, submit it for the supplement as well. In cases of early termination, and there are different reasons, some of the reasons are really, really good. You graduated early, you found a job, you found a position, we have really good reasons for termination. But whatever the reason for termination, PIs need to inform our office and the grants management specialist. The GMS is listed on your notice of award. That person needs to be informed, and our office needs to be informed. You can send it to me, copy to the GMS, or send it to GMS and copy it to me. Either way, we need to know. And we need to have a final progress report submitted as soon as possible, not 120 days after. But if you're terminating, we need the proper progress report to come in, okay? Lastly, I want to just, because there are so many PIs online, I want to move a little bit away from the supplement and just point your attention toward another funding opportunity that our center supports. These are opportunities that are co-managed by CRCHD and also by the Division of Cell Biology at NCI. These are Health Disparities Research R21 and the Health Disparities Research R01 awards. So the nice thing about this R21, you're actually not, you can be an experienced investigator. I put this up here because a lot of you do research that you may not think is health disparities related. But if you look at the research itself, you may find links to disparity. And if you have if you think your research project can link to health disparities research by either, collaborating with someone or thinking of your research in a new direction, I strongly encourage you to look at these opportunities and talk to the program officer, Dr. Tiffany Wallace. I have her email here. You can talk to her about potential applications for these funding opportunities. And also, if you get them, obviously you can then attach a supplement and support a candidate who will then do disparities research as well. So the next application time is November 17th. If you do have projects like that and are interested in these funding opportunities, please contact Dr. Wallace. So I put up some useful links. The talk will be available to all of you. I'm happy to take questions. I do want to say for the diversity supplement guidelines, the program announcement link within the guidelines right now is still the old link 15322 because that's the one we're using for this fiscal year. But starting October 1, which is the next submission cycle, we're going on to the next program announcement, which will be 16288, and you have that link earlier in the talk, in this talk. But all other information in the guideline document are current. So I'm happy to take some questions right now, and then if you have questions that come up after I leave, feel free to send it to Carrie or Linda or Liz, Dr. Peruccio, who's also online, and I'm happy to follow up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice.
Do you want me to stop sharing now, or?
Go ahead and keep those up just a sec, that's fine. I do have a couple of questions that have come in. Why don't we take about 5 minutes at the most for questions before we move on for other things, and I'll collect the rest and send them out to you after that. A question about if there are multiple PIs on an R01, can any PI, aka like not the contact PI, apply for an eligible candidate? So if this person's a co-investigator on an R01, can they lead the mentor team?
So there's a difference between mentor and the PI. So only a PI or co-PI can put in an application for the diversity supplement. However, the mentor can be somebody else entirely. So a co-investigator on the grant can be a mentor. He or she just cannot be the person who submits because the PI and the co-PI are the responsible parties for the parent grant, and therefore they're the responsible parties for the supplement. Of course, the PI and the co-PI needs to be on board, right? You're using their grant and they're ultimately responsible. If we are missing progress reports, we go to the PI to ask for them. But the primary mentor can be somebody else. This is actually a very useful question because we do have mentoring teams from smaller institutions that may not have a lot of active NIH or NCI grants. But if they collaborate with someone at a bigger institution, they can certainly apply through that person's grants to support one of their students at their institution. That make sense?
I'll let you know if the person comes back with any questions. So if you want to follow up, go ahead and send it this way.
Yeah, that was my question. That's great. Thank you. This is Joe Osborne.
Great.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, next question. Alison, do you have any sample grants that can be used as a reference as they build applications?
No, I do not, and I strongly discourage any sample templates of the diversity supplement application. The applications are very individual. You'll notice that in the review, we specifically don't say we need a stellar student. Your grades needs to be such and such. Your GPA needs to be this. You need to have so many papers. None of this apply really to the diversity supplement. It's a case-by-case thing. The diversity supplements are used to support candidates who sometimes are stellar. They're stellar candidates already. They're coming off of F. They want to apply for a K. They're in between, and they need support for a couple of years. We also have candidates who don't look that good on paper, but for one reason or another, they have had difficulties and challenges. And what the diversity supplement can do is to provide that candidate with that opportunity to build up their resume. So there really is no template for the diversity supplement, other than the fact that you go to the guidelines and you make sure that all the components that's listed in the guidelines are included in your application. But each one is going to be individual, and it's going to be reviewed as such.
Great, thank you. 2 more quick questions. What is the rate of success pay line on NCI diversity supplements?
No pay line. I can't give you a number that you can quote. I can tell you for the past few years, we've been hovering around 70%. We try to do better. It's sort of dependent on the quality of applications we get and also the budget that we have.
Great, thank you. Is a postdoc who's been supported by a T32 institutional training grant for 3 years eligible for a diversity supplement?
Yes.
Yeah, once that funding finishes, yeah. So and I guess it's sort of a similar, I think you've been focusing on this. Can an application for a supplement be submitted well on a training grant for someone who will be coming off completing the 3rd year so that there's no gap in funding?
Yes, we just need that institution letter that states clearly that you're supported by the T32 or whatever it is, from what time to what time, and the reason you're coming off is what. So we need that letter to in fact, for all PHS funding, it's part of your eligibility letter. You need to list the start and end dates of all PHS funding. But specifically for the training grant, if you're still on it as you apply, then you need that letter from the institution that says you're coming off at, in September because.
Great, thank you. That is all the questions I'm showing. And again, if you do have any follow-up questions for Alison, you can reach out to her directly. She's given you that information, or you can always go through us as well. So hang on a second here. I will get the slides back up and we will turn to our next presenter, who is Shawna. Thank you so much, Alison. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank all of you for your attention. I'm going to sign off now. And if there's any more questions, just send it to me. Thank you.
Hi, Carrie. This is Shawna. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go for it.
Oh, excellent. Then that means everyone else can hear me too. So my name is Shawna Hudson, and I think we may have sort of gone in and out of sound when I was being introduced. So I'm an associate professor in family medicine and currently an R01 holder, and have had several supplements on different mechanisms that we've worked with. So I'm going to talk about my experiences both applying for and finding candidates for supplements. So Carrie, if you can move to the first slide. So I'm going to talk to you today about 3 projects or actually there are 2 projects, but 3 supplements that I've been involved with, and also sort of pull on some experiences from other folks that I know here at Rutgers as well. And so the first project so we've actually had experiences with postdoctoral diversity supplement. I currently have a faculty reentry supplement on my own R01, and as well we have an application that's pending and looks like it will be funded for a second faculty diversity supplement on my current R01. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did and how we sort of positioned ourselves for those different pieces. So one of the things that Alison mentioned before in her discussion was the use of mentoring teams, and how do you position folks in terms of mentoring and getting people to be at the right place in the right time to be competitive for supplements. And so the first application that I was involved with as a co-mentor was the postdoctoral diversity supplement in the first row of our table. And so the parent grant, just to give you a little bit of background, the parent grant for that particular project is a behavioral intervention that was a randomized control trial. And we had 3 phases of the study. So there was a development phase where we actually were developing the intervention, did qualitative work around the development of the intervention, and then moved into a second phase of RCT testing of the study. And so we were actually in the first year and the first phase of our work on that particular project when we applied for our postdoctoral supplement. I was a co-investigator on the study, and it's a multi-site study that was housed in Fox Chase, and Rutgers was one of the accruing sites for the study. And so we were actually very fortunate to locate a student here at Rutgers who had finished her, who I actually knew through one of our pipeline programs as a undergraduate moving into graduate school. We found out that she was now finishing up her doctorate degree at Temple University and was looking for opportunities and looking for full-time work for at the postdoctoral level. So we were able to put in an application for her at that time to be on the, to do the diversity supplement for this R01. So the parent grant was in development, and it was a qualitative development process. And so what we proposed for that project was that it was focused on prostate cancer, but we were actually hoping to oversample African Americans. And so at that time, it was something that we had not written into the aims of the project, but certainly was going to help facilitate better and greater knowledge of how that intervention might be used with a particular subpopulation. And so for the diversity supplement for a postdoc, we proposed to have her develop a series of focus groups that she was going to do in the community with both African American men and their caregivers, and what they thought their needs were and how would those be best addressed within the parent grant's intervention. So that was the project focus for postdoctoral supplement. Because I was a co-I and the Rutgers site PI on this, then we put together a mentoring team, because the candidate was actually based, she lived in New Jersey and was sort of halfway between our location and Fox Chase. And so we came up with a dual mentoring program for her, that she would spend some time at our site and then other times at Fox Chase. And so we pulled together a program so that she would be able to go back and forth between the two sites. And so as you can see, our research type for that, because we were in the beginning phases of the study and had not moved to the RCT, the data that we proposed that she collect for it was going to supplement our data for the parent grant and give us some really rich information about a population that we hadn't planned to focus on, but thought would be very important in terms of exploring what were the needs for that particular project. And so the value added for us was, obviously it gave us someone who had 50% effort on the project devoted at a postdoctoral level. So she actually was very active in terms of helping us to develop protocols and other pieces for the parent grant as we moved out of the qualitative analysis and then into the RCT phase. So it gave her some experience in the field, putting a study out, as well as doing data collection and analysis. And she worked with us on a manuscript that was then published out of the initial preliminary data for that. So that was our first experience of working with the diversity supplement mechanism. And it was my first introduction to it, because at that point, I did not have an R01. I was coming off of my K award at that point. And then within a year, I had actually finished my K award and had applied successfully for an R01. So that gave me a history of mentoring and working with folks, so that when I went in to apply for my own first faculty reentry supplement, that it gave me a history of being able to show that I've been working with other people. So I wanted to make sure that I sort of brought that up, because that was something that Alison talked about in terms of, you don't have to have just one mentor, you can have a mentoring group, and that doesn't always have to be the PI on the grant, but you do have to work with the PI of the grant in order to have that happen. So that's one example. The other two examples I'm going to talk a little bit about are our current faculty reentry supplement, as well as our faculty diversity supplement that's pending. And so my current R01 has a similar sort of study design. These are all population science programs. And so we are in the process of developing a self-management intervention that will be targeted to long-term survivors of adult onset cancers. And the goal is to get them to do more self-management within primary care settings. And so for that study, we had a similar study design in that we had a qualitative, descriptive phase of what was it that folks would want in terms of the intervention, what were the tools that they thought would be useful. We were doing a perspective where we were interested in both primary care docs as well as their patient perceptions. And so really wanted to know what were the pieces that we were going to need to have in terms of the science for that project. So our first year of the R01, we put in for a reentry supplement for a faculty member who I met through our cancer control program, who had taken time off for child rearing. And so she had gone through, gotten her Ph.D., had a very successful career, and was doing work in terms of cardiovascular disease, and took time off to have her children, and then wanted to transition back into an active career. And so Alison's interest was in looking at overweight and obesity and other cardiovascular disease risks in terms of breast cancer survivorship. And our study, we were looking at breast, colorectal, and prostate cancer survivors. So our initial sample size for the study was that we were going to do 30 interviews with patients and split them amongst the 3 different groups. For the supplement, because she was focused on overweight and obesity, we said, you know, it'd be very interesting for you to focus in on those breast cancer survivors, and then for us to be able to do some comparative work looking at, are their preferences any different? Are there things that we would need to be more attentive to for that population? And so she put in her reentry supplement to focus in on that population. So we were basically essentially able to double our sample size for the initial depth interview piece of our study by adding the supplement. So it was a win-win for us because it was a way for her to get back into active research. Gave her some qualitative skills and some experience in terms of survivorship. She brought some really nice previous experience in cardiovascular disease that helped us think through some of the measures that we wanted to look at in terms of late effects for our populations. And so really was a huge value added to our team. So she's been working with us for the first 2 years of our project and is now going into a no-cost extension for her supplement. And so now we're midway through our project and transitioning into the RCT phase where we're actually rolling out the interventions that we've developed for primary care. And so now we have a supplement that's pending currently where the goal moved from doing first primary data collection to now we're looking at, okay, can we use our baseline data to be able to understand what's the profile of patients who are using the intervention, and can we look at it and make some associations in terms of who's going to be better or higher users of the different intervention components. So our current faculty diversity supplement that's pending is focused on that. And again, it's something where we were going to collect the data for the parent grant anyway, but we didn't have an active co-investigator who was really interested in building those profiles and looking at that from a health literacy perspective. And so we were able to identify through our networks, actually through GMaP and some other folks at different settings within SBM and some professional conferences, to be able to identify a candidate who was actually going to work with us. So actually that's a good transition to my next slide. So who do we find and how do we find them, and what were some of our key lessons learned here? So in our setting, in our experience, we didn't have a huge network to be able to go through. A lot of what we did was sort of networking through existing relationships that people had, knowing about pre and postdoc programs that were here on the ground at Rutgers, and then getting sort of the heads up from our colleagues saying, here is a really great candidate. Do you know of any opportunities for this person? So that was sort of one way that we found people. The other way was through some scientific organizations. So sort of serendipitously for our last supplement, I met the candidate at a scientific meeting about 2 years before she actually came to interview at our institution. And then she was hired at our institution. And so it allowed us to sort of create a relationship and have discussions around what would be interesting to her, what could she then add to our project, and sort of expedited that relationship in ways that if we had not met through a scientific organization and not had that background, it might have been a little bit harder. So we really focused on looking for people who had some sort of complementary interest in the science that we were doing and could bring something to the table, because that helps to keep them engaged, and it also helps to keep the PIs engaged in terms of wanting to be able to be part of those projects and to keep them moving to fruition over the 2 years of the supplement, or possibly 3 with an extension. Can you get to the next slide, Carrie? In terms of the training and the science, one of the things that we found to be particularly beneficial is to think about how can you actually complement the parent grant science with the objectives and the goals that you're actually proposing for the supplements. And so, you know, really trying to capitalize on what are the new skills that the candidate needs, but what are the skills that they also bring to the table, and then thinking through that when you put together the training plan. So all of our candidates all brought something to the table, either cardiovascular disease expertise, some expertise in M health. We have an interest in terms of looking at disparities and how different populations will actually be attuned to different components of the interventions. All of those things are skills that people that are supplement mentees brought to the table. And so really we tried to spend a lot of time thinking through what's going to be the way that you can actually enhance their training through the supplement. So if you can move to my last slide. So for us, we really actually like to have the mentoring plan really serve as a basis for a mentoring contract. And so one of the things that Alison mentioned before is that there's not sort of a one-size-fits-all or a template, but really that you have to tailor the supplement to the needs of the candidate. And you also need to tailor the supplement to the needs of the parent grant as well. So one of the things that we've been able to do is to think through not only what does the candidate need, but what does the candidate need that might also help to benefit the parent grant, and then think about, okay, well, if the parent grant has lots of qualitative data and we have people who have the ability to learn about qualitative data analysis and really serve as a project management function for it, and to sort of run projects as opposed to just being sort of an adjunct onto a project, then thinking about how can we get some career training and some other things to enhance their career and give them skills to be able to take on to their new projects when they leave, but also then enhance the ways in which we do our data analysis, manage our data, and write up our results. So we've really tried to figure out how to think through the mentoring plan in ways that's going to be both fresh and useful for the mentees, as well as for myself as a PI who meets with the mentees on a weekly basis to sort of see where are they at in process and how is that helping us to move everything forward. So we think about it really in terms of it's a synergistic ball, and so it's not a supplement and a project that you do by yourself, but that it really needs to be integrated into the research team and have your mentees come in as co-investigators as opposed to just mentees or people who are sort of observing from the side. We really want to have them as active participants in the grant. So with that, I think I'll hand over to Carmen and then we can take questions, or did you want to do them back and forth?
Well, I only have one question at this point. Let me go ahead and give it to you and then we'll pass to Carmen.
Okay.
So how did you work out the logistics of the postdoc diversity supplement application when the candidate was not yet in your lab, or did she join your lab before putting the application in?
So no, she was not in either of our labs before we put in the application. So she basically had a job. She was actually in the process of graduating. So we had identified her as she was finishing up her Ph.D. So she had that summer gap time, and we had identified her right before May. And so the timing on the parent grant was such that that grant started in September. So we were just very fortunate that she was planning to take that summer off anyway, and we were able to start it then at the, right at the September 1 start. So part of that is also looking at what's the academic year look like and what are the plans for the candidate and how does that then fit in with what you're planning to do.
Great, thank you. Let me go ahead and move it on in the interest of time here and pass it on to Dr. Carmen Guerra. Thank you, Carmen, or thank you, Shawna, so much.
Mm-hmm.
Not hearing you, Carmen.
Carrie?
There we go, we gotcha.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Carrie. As Carrie mentioned, I'm Carmen Guerra. I'm one of the associate professors here at the University of Pennsylvania, and I wanted to thank the CDRN as well as my fellow distinguished panelists for allowing me to offer our perspective here at the University of Pennsylvania, and for everybody who is still viewing this webinar live, and those of you who will join through a recording of the webinar. So the perspectives that I have on my first slide, and we can move forward to that, Carrie, are two perspectives, and actually the first one is mine. And for the first one, I will take you back to about 16 years ago when I was entering research. I had been on the faculty here at the University of Pennsylvania as an assistant professor for 4 years, and was very inspired by the many wonderful investigators that I saw around me to develop skills in research. And so I approached my division chief at the time, and he referred me to an associate professor at the time, now full professor, and that's Dr. Judy Shea, who had just received her first R01, which you see listed here, to develop a low literacy version of a instrument called the Consumer Assessment of Healthcare Providers and Systems, or CAPS. And this is an instrument that assesses the quality of providers on behalf of patients who use them, as well as healthcare systems and many other aspects of the healthcare system. And what was determined was that the existing version at the time was a high literacy version. And Carrie, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. It said that I was muted. And so we developed in that parent grant 2 versions that the parent went on to test in a randomized control fashion. And so when I approached her, we decided to have create a study to apply for a diversity supplement. And that study also merged my interest in cancer prevention and screening. And so we designed my project to be a questionnaire, an adaptation of an existing questionnaire by Terry Davis about knowledge, beliefs, and attitudes and intent to undergo mammography screening. And it was designed for a low literacy population. And so I ended up spending 2 years with that parent grant administering the study instruments, but also my own instrument, which we had adapted to obtain the perspectives of a mostly Latino population. And so that 2 years of a diversity supplement was instrumental in really launching my career that allowed me to gain some preliminary data, which I then was able to apply successfully for a K01 from the NCI. But it also added to the parent grant in that I was also a co-investigator that brought the perspective of Latino populations to that parent grant. And as you've heard, these supplements are designed to increase the training and skills of the candidate. And so at the same time, I was taking classes in epidemiology and learning about health services research. And both of those skills really helped me in designing my K award, which subsequently allowed me to obtain a master's in epidemiology. So I would sum it up, that experience, as Shawna mentioned, as a win-win for everybody involved. It was a win for the parent grant, certainly a win for me in launching my investigative career, and a win for the institution in that it helps us to diversify our workforce, our investigator workforce. The next example I have was kindly given to me with permission by Dr. Octavia Pickett-Blakely, who is an assistant professor here at the School of Medicine, and she's also the director of GI Nutrition, Celiac Brew, and the Obesity Program, as well as permission from her mentor, Anil Rusky, who's a professor of medicine and genetics and a well-established, outstanding NIH-funded investigator, and has an outstanding track record for mentoring countless postdocs and students and junior faculty. And I must admit that I'm one of those privileged to have received his mentorship. And Dr. Rusky is part of what's known as BetterNet, which is a NCI-funded research program called Barrett's Esophagus Translational Research Network. And Dr. Octavia Pickett-Blakely has unique skills that were new to that group of investigators. Her skills in nutrition and expertise in obesity were actually missing components of the BetterNet. And so she was able to design a project, which you see here listed, that was going to characterize the esophageal microbiome in Barrett's esophagus. And also, she would also examine the effect of weight loss on adipokine and microbiome profiles in obese individuals through a randomized control study. And during that time, Dr. Pickett-Blakely has proposed to develop additional skills in genomics and bioinformatics, as well as additional research training and data to base additional R-type and non-NIH awards. And so she's going to be, in my opinion, another wonderful example of how these are win-win research supplements for all involved. And if we can go to the next slide, Carrie, please. The question about how did we connect senior and junior investigators here at the University of Pennsylvania, I must admit that this is actually a work in progress for us. And first, I'd like to mention how this all came about. In fact, part of this webinar, the idea came to us in part because I took a new role that was created by my new department chair, Dr. Michael Parmasek. He created the first vice chair position for diversity and inclusion here at the University of Pennsylvania, and one of the goals of that role is to increase the diversity of the faculty in the Department of Medicine, which is the largest department at the School of Medicine with about 500 plus faculty. And so since that, knowing that that was a goal, one of my first initial thoughts was that we possibly could do a better job in making our investigators and faculty aware of diversity supplements. And I was surprised to find that there was very little resources available here at our institution, and that led us to connect with the CDRN. And I'm delighted because I think now with this recorded webinar, we have an additional resource to offer our faculty who might be interested in either becoming candidates or PIs who are interested in recruiting candidates for these supplements. And so one of the first things that I realized was that we did not have a list of diversity supplement qualifying grants for our institution here. And so I reached out to our Office of the Executive Vice Dean, and that's Dr. John Epstein and his team. John Epstein serves as the Chief Scientific Officer. And his team did a search of all the active grants at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. And then they sifted through those active grants to find those that are specifically eligible per the program announcement that we've been talking about. So that was one of the first steps we did, and I'm thankful to Susan Pesante as well as Catherine Meany, who were responsible for drafting that list. And now that I had a list of qualifying grants, my next task was to create a list of all the potential qualifying candidates. And so we then requested a list, and I was now able to access, given my new role, a list of all the underrepresented minority faculty. And so now I have the potential group of PIs and potential group of candidates. And so, as I mentioned, this work in progress is now to bring them together. But But we need to offer them these resources, such as this webinar, and better access to people who may be able to answer the questions of how to go about the next steps. And so that's where we are. And towards that goal, I think one of the next steps we plan to do is to send a letter to all of the qualifying PI holders of these grants that qualify, as well as to potential candidates, to make them aware of this opportunity of a diversity supplement, and then to also develop a group of faculty who have successfully received these awards, and PIs that have successfully applied for these awards, to serve as a resource for those who may express interest in moving forward to their own applications. Next slide, please, Carrie. And so I'll end with how we have, or how we are envisioning our use of diversity supplements, and it really is to expand our workforce diversity. I'm fortunate enough to be part of a university and a medical school that has both included increasing faculty diversity into their strategic plans, and I think that this is an opportunity for us to implement that strategic plan successfully by increasing the investigator workforce diversity. Currently, our underrepresented minority faculty composes about 6% of the faculty, and we would all like to see that number grow. I believe the number is 8% nationally. And so we feel that bringing this to the attention of the many PIs and candidates will increase awareness and potentially lead to help us diversify the investigator workforce, which will help us develop solutions to the scientific challenges and the many complex healthcare delivery problems of today. So with that, I'll end and pass it back to Carrie, and thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you so much, Carmen. I have one question for you guys, and then I'll pass it back to Linda to just do a couple of wrap-up slides and share some resources with you. So the question was, does the, sorry, just moved. Does the project or component of the project also need to address racial disparities in order to be responsive? Either Shawna or Carmen?
So my understanding is that it does not have to address a disparity. Obviously, it would be value added if it does, but it does not have to. I think that the disparity diversity piece is really about the candidate, not necessarily the research project.
And that may be a good question for us as a follow-up to Alison. Sean, I would concur with you, and I think that would be something worth sharing with her as well, and getting back to folks.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll pass it over to you, Linda, to kind of wrap us up.
Okay, great. So first, I just truly want to thank Alison, Shawna, and Carmen for an amazing set of presentations. I think, so packed with good thoughts and good suggestions, I think lessons learned, and I think kind of hopefully gives everyone on the call here this sense of the breadth of opportunities that utilizing this supplement, these diversity supplements, can really provide to our research, and thank you so much. I want to just kind of close out our webinar again with connecting you all back to your GMAP region. As I said, we are the region for the Cancer Disparities Research Network that have really sponsored this webinar today, but there are going to be subsequent webinars sponsored by other regions, and really this is your hub. I mean, there are a number of you on the call today that would really fit into Region 4, and we hope that you will fill out a membership form and be on our listserv so that we can really get you more involved. But again, for some of you who are outside of our region, you have your own coordinating office that I think is really essential that you get connected with. part of the work that we do at a regional level, but share nationally, is we have a list of all the R01s in the region, and that may be a way for those of you who are looking for mentors, a way to begin to find other investigators with an area of interest or an area of research that you might really find important in your project. And we also have a list of all the current F31s and trainees from other grants that may help you with the mentee matches. So part of what I think each GMAP region will be doing is trying to help you make those connections. We do that through multiple ways. We have travel scholarships so that you can get to national meetings to make those connections. We can do that individually. And again, I think it's really important to connect to the Cancer a Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities program officers. For example, Alison, if you're considering a supplement, but also our own program officers, actually, who are all on the call today with us. And I would like to give Liz an opportunity to say a few words in terms of how to connect more broadly with GMAP and the center as you move forward. Liz, are you, I know it's late in the call, are you still here with us?
Here. So, can you hear us?
Yes, Liz, we can hear
Okay.
you now. Yes,
okay.
go ahead.
So, just wanted to thank you for a wonderful presentation.
I went back.
If somebody can just mute their phone, it's hard to hear. We appreciate the phone. So yeah, just want to say thank you for a wonderful presentation. We agree that it was jam-packed with information, and we're here at CRCHD if you need any follow-up questions, such as the one that was posed regarding the diversity supplement and whether the project for the diversity supplement has to do, should it be a racial ethnic component or the project. That's not the case. As was mentioned, the diversity supplement should be targeted to an underrepresented candidate. So as long as that is fulfilled, you know, the research can be related to the parent grant, as Alison had mentioned before. And we do appreciate the case studies that were presented. That was very helpful in how to, you know, connect mentees with the PI, and we thought those were wonderful strategies. We appreciate that. And so as Linda mentioned, there are 7 GMAP regions, and they all have their websites, and please, we encourage you to go to their websites and connect through them, as well as us here at our Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities, the GMAP team here. We're happy to assist you in navigating the network. So I think that's all we had. We can add. Marianne, did you want to add anything? Okay, great, thanks. Back to you, Linda.
I was even well, I was they have the titles.
Oh, were you on still?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I am here. I was on mute. I'm sorry. Thanks, Liz.
Okay.
As I was saying, that is Liz Ferruccio, our project officer from the center. And I think in the last minute, we'd really like to go to the next slide, Carrie. And we would really like you to complete our evaluation. We'd love to hear your feedback about the call, how we can improve these calls, what you gain from it. And again, we will put together a list of these final questions that we see in the chat and share those as well. So Carrie, I'll kick it back to you for any final comments. And again, thank all of our speakers, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here.
Yes, again, I just want to reiterate that. Thank you so much. If you have any questions about how to connect with GMAP, how to connect with any of the folks that were on the call today, please feel free to email me directly, and I will be happy to resource you wherever you need. And do please fill out the survey. We really appreciate that. As you know, the more data, the better, right? So thank you so much. We wish you all well, and we thank you for joining us today.